Happy December, everybody.
Happy December.
Happy
indeed.
December. You can tell we're exhausted because we've been putting this particular episode off because it's the just let Taliesin rant like a crazy person for 2 hours, and where he doesn't have to do any reading because he's already done all the reading.
I'm so excited. I am so excited for this week. We've been looking forward to this for so long.
I've been looking forward to this since we started the show. Just like
I'm so excited.
The Taliesin, the 2-hour Taliesin Grant Morrison.
I've written a 30-minute long rhyming couplet. Couplets that will go on.
Surprise me.
Yeah.
The rhyme of the ancient mariner.
But are you joking?
Rhyme of the ancient Scotsman.
Yep. Rhyme of the witch.
There once was a young man from Glasgow. Yeah, no, never mind. I'm not going there. That could get weird.
Yeah, I talked to my mom and dad this morning, and I mentioned to them, like, well, tune into the show, but just know that you're only going to see me talk for a grand total of 5 minutes while I just marvel at Taliesin.
I gave you a tiny bit of reading to do just because I wanted to see your opinion on a couple of things. So that is true. Yes, we're talking about Grant Morrison today. We're doing, and
I liked your gesture, which I think was to point out the unbelievable brilliance of Ken Wynn.
Ken Wynn
weirdly captured him perfectly. I'm like, the couple times in my life I've met Grant, he kind of like he has this very imposing yet gentle and very intense vibe, and his wonderful shaved head and
Well
great accent. If you look him up, I'm going to send you some YouTube links if you feel like really watching this man talk to you, and he's fascinating to listen to. This is a comic book writer and artist, mostly writer, who changed my fucking life top to bottom. I would not be here right now if it wasn't for Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison is the reason I'm a professional nerd at all.
Well, he's your dad.
He is my father. In my
He
head.
gave you
In
life.
which dimensions?
Probably all of them.
Okay.
Well, there are only 52. We have a map of the multiverse we can pick up
my God.
and take a look around. Because Grant Morrison made the map of the multiverse. Yes, he did. I love it.
He's done a lot.
A lot of people did things.
He's done a lot, that Grant Morrison.
There are writers, and we've already talked about a few of them, who have expansive, terrifying careers that go on. There's our map. Look at that. Oh, it's beautiful. I can.
And this is just what he's done lately.
This is just something he threw together. They're like, make 52 universes that are kind of fun. And he created a cosmology for the DC universe, because that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he figured Jack Kirby did it. I should do the same.
He is, and that's one of the reasons why I'm wearing my Jack Kirby shirt. And my new X-Men jacket, this is.
Yeah, you're very.
Yeah, no, I was trying to like dress up for the occasion. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna be so giggly.
I'm so excited about today's episode.
Is because Morrison has done a lot, in my opinion, to like take a wonderful amount of modern Kirby, bring a Kirby sensibility back to comics. There's a book, actually, it's right over here, Final Crisis, which, while it was a very difficult read as a single issue run, we'll be getting to it, is
when he got the reins of a big DC crossover.
A big DC crossover, the multi-universe crossover that I'm a huge fan of. And it reads very much like a Kirby book. It's got the same pacing and the like the heavy cuts and the big ideas of a Kirby book, where things just happen, panels jump from place to place, strange things like cuts to people in different times and places commenting on what's happening far away from them. The new gods show up. It's a huge, big book, and it's a lot of fun. But it's definitely, it's a book that I don't know how much fun it is if you're not already steeped in kind of Kirby's style and Kirby's energy. But it's such a love letter to Jack Kirby. This is one of those books I keep in my bathroom for like, I'm just gonna sit and read about the 52 universes worth of Superman saving the universe from an evil vampire Superman who's destroying the universe.
Like in revisiting some of the my favorite Grant Morrison, like that's one of the things that he does so well is like say, yeah, all the stuff that we've been doing is great, but remember the Golden Age? Like that was awesome. Let's go back. Let's revisit the Golden Age. Let's
find
play
weird
with
little
that.
gems.
Like,
Tawny the Tiger versus Calabac. Tawny the Tiger, who is like a cute, it was a anthropomorphic tiger dressed like Matt Smith's Doctor Who.
Yeah. Tawny.
Tawny the Talking Tiger. In a like blood match versus Calabac, son of Darkseid, like for the fate of the universe, for freedom and versus control of the universe. There's so much.
I don't remember Tony the Tiger as a character.
Tawny.
Talking Tawny.
Talking
from
Tawny.
Captain Marvel.
Okay.
Golden Age Captain Marvel.
Now I get it.
You know, the tiger.
I was like, Tony the Tiger? Like, I was like, because I know he did a Roadrunner analogy in Animal Man, but I didn't remember him doing Tony the Tiger in Crisis.
So here's the thing that I hope will become clear as we go through this, because I'm fascinated by this with Grant Morrison, is that, like, very often creators in the comic book space will fall kind of into the camps of, I love the classic stuff versus I think it's lame and I want to reinvent it and make it edgy. And Grant Morrison is the only person I know of who just can't stop doing both of those things all the time. Like, so what's that about?
Well, he's had some periods. I will say, like he's had a blue period, so to speak. I think oftentimes there is certain art that when viewed from a certain direction feels edgy. I think that he's less edgy than he seems. I think that sometimes he gets a reputation for being edgy that he doesn't necessarily deserve. There is definitely cultural edginess in a lot of what he does, and there's a lot of punk rock in a lot of what he does, and a lot of.
Like in Doom Patrol, he's bringing in concepts from art film and from surrealism and other things that are intentionally outside of the norm in that way.
Sure, Doom Patrol actually, if anything, like, and there's a great documentary which I'm going to recommend called "Talking with Gods" that you can go watch, which is about the fascinating life. There's that poster of Grant Morrison. And he talked. One of the things he talks about in Doom Patrol is that he was just writing what he was experiencing. Like this was his life at the time, and these were the people that he was hanging out with people who were starting to figure out what we're now finding in the 21st century about gender identity, and people who were in like the idea of like what would it be to be powerful, but also not be someone's power fantasy. It's like no one really wants to just be a severed head in a box as a superhero. These are not the people you wanted to be, and making villains that were kind of broken and weird. And I like the Brotherhood of Dada is a good example. I swear I'm gonna get back to this. I'm so sorry. No one has any idea what I'm talking about.
I immediately derailed you. Okay, for those who don't know, what are we talking about?
Currently, we're talking about a book called Doom Patrol, which we have mentioned on the show before because it's
countless times.
Currently being written by Gerard Way, who has been doing, and I haven't said this enough on Twitter, and I want to say he has been doing an amazing job. He has been doing an amazing job. The most recent issue of Doom Patrol was just a fanboy's delight. He brought my favorite villains back, who used to be called the Brotherhood of Dada, that Grant Morrison created, which was a absurdist supervillains group.
Dada is, of course, an art movement that basically goes back to circa World War I.
Yeah.
That had to do with sort of rejection of the kind of order that results in a world war. That's an oversimplification.
Yes, but like famously, like they had a big sign over their big art gallery, their big art exhibits, which was "Dada is not dead. Mind your overcoat."
I did not even know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. And so the Brotherhood of Dada were just kind of weird and trying to like make the world. They were actually trying to make the world better through absurdism. There was one of my Mr. Nobody, who was kind of he was now the leader of the new Brotherhood of Nada. Sure, kind of now into like a nihilism kick, was dressed up as Santa Claus at one point and went to a toy store, like a Toys R Us, and started just handing children toys until the police came to arrest him because he was robbing the toy store and he was just like, I've just created 50 children who have this image of Santa Claus being arrested by police, and they're all going to grow up to hate the police because they saw you arrest Santa Claus. I win! And my plan worked perfectly.
You played right into my hands. So
what?
I mean, don't arrest him? No, we have to.
He was just robbing a toy store.
That's our
giving away.
system.
Santa Claus was giving all the children's toys until the police came to stop him. So the new Brotherhood of Nada. Wow, they're great. I was already happy when there's a character who is made entirely out of cement who has no feeling. She is like she can only get feeling from like ruining and called the Brutalist. Like in the most perfect like oh god. Oh, that makes me so happy.
Oh, like Brutalist architecture.
Like Brutalist architecture. She looks like a piece of Brutalist architecture.
Yeah.
Well, and she's like got like the block head
Yeah, the block
and like
and the
weird
circle
like a
with the
sort
hole.
of
Yep. She
Yep.
looks like a Brutalist building. It's
And
so
there's
great.
what? There's almost 25 years in between these incarnations?
So much that's a good question.
I'm just let's situate things within like Life of
I will be
Morrison
going
or
back
some
to the
other
beginning
kind of.
at some point so you guys understand what I'm talking about. Doom Patrol was 89. Yeah, started in 89.
Woof.
But the first comic, the
Almost
first issues
30.
of Doom Patrol were the 60s, right?
Oh yeah, Doom Patrol was he was given it as kind of a pickup because it was kind of DC's attempt to make the X-Men.
Except it preceded them technically, didn't it?
Technically, yeah.
There's
they were
a
kind of
simultaneous development. There's a long-running sort of comics argument.
chicken or egg.
Yeah, who had misfit heroes, a team of misfit heroes
I
first.
believe a slight chronological edge, but no clear causation is like DC wins on that one.
Yeah. But X-Men really took the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Whereas Doom Patrol was just not quite. It hadn't quite coalesced until they handed it to Grant, and he went.
So did Grant request it, or did they hand it to him?
I don't know. I will say so. Here's some interesting things. I know
Because
a little bit about.
it seems very much like Grant would be like, I want to do this thing, because that's very much his MO.
Well, he wasn't quite the hot. He wasn't quite the hot shit yet. The thing that made him hot shit, and I'm about to get, and I'll get there, was Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
Arkham Asylum was the thing that made him hot shit. I'm sure he'd be so irritated hearing this. And Grant, if you are watching, I know you have better shit to do, and I apologize for ending this terrible and really inappropriate hero worship. I just want people to read your books. So I think it makes them better people. So Grant Morrison he's a Scottish artist and writer. He had a fascinating childhood, which he talks about in the documentary. His father was a soldier turned anti-war protester who he tells some stories about being taken by his dad to sort of be lookout as his dad broke into like nuclear facilities in Europe, and like he was like, so like I have all these, talks about having these weird like memories of breaking into nuclear facilities, like the interiors of like missile defense systems, and it's really heavy, and was really encouraged by his mother, who was a sci-fi nut, to like really read this stuff and read comic books and go into it, and was self-publishing by 16. Was drawing and writing his own.
They didn't even have an internet for him to be on.
Fuck no, he was just he was making. He had a character that he had created. Like, what is this in 1978? It got published in an anthology, which was Gideon Stargrave, which was kind of his version of the closest thing they have now is Casanova. If you know the book, is very much
Matt Fraction's
kind of,
indie book that I love very much.
Very much, if you can imagine a kid raised on 60s iconography, like very much like a power fantasy.
Okay, so I just started Invisibles, and there's a guy named Gideon who wishes he'd been in 60s spy movies.
Literally.
Okay,
so
just checking.
King Mob is, if you haven't figured out just quickly, is kind of the character that Grant placed himself into the book with. And he wrote that character. He is actually a novelist in that book who wrote that character. So he's actually like, there's a meta level of everything.
Amazing.
That's really deep. Oh man, there's so much.
So what was the name of the anthology it got published in?
Near Myths.
Near Myths. That's a
1978.
great name.
Time is a 4-letter word. And he was doing stuff with his friends, writing kind of low-level stuff for years. He was in a band, and he thought that was kind of going to be his thing. The band didn't really take off the way they wanted, but the comics apparently did. And
Wait, did he do comics for the band?
he was writing comics and in the band at the same time. But,
But did he write comics about the band?
Not really,
Okay.
as far as I know. Not that I've ever read. And he's done some really fascinating. He did a run of Steed and Mr. Peel, Warrior magazine, and then a little bit for Marvel UK. There was bits and pieces all over 2000 AD, and like he was kind of making a name for himself in the British.
Is that when he did Zenith?
Zenith, and then at some point, I believe Vertigo was the.
Page and Karen Berger. Was it you? Did you do it?
I would love to think that like somewhere in like some bar, Karen Berger was just sitting in a smoky little back booth, just Mr. Morrison. I hear great things about you. I'm putting together a team of like-minded individuals. And he did very well. He had a bunch of kind of good indie hits that you could have in like the Vertigo years. There's a chronology here is a little all over the place, but the first big
Time is a 4-letter word.
Time is a 4-letter word, but he got a reputation for a very punk rock vibe. The Invisibles. What was the Invisibles? See where I can find my.
If I had to guess, was it Arkham Asylum, then Doom Patrol, then Invisibles? Because Invisibles is his creator-owned, so it would make sense if they gave him Doom Patrol first.
I don't know if Invisibles is creator-owned or not. I think it's Vertigo.
It says right, okay. For some value of creator-owned that says created by Grant Morrison.
I'm looking for the Arkham, like what year was Arkham Asylum? I'm very bad at this.
And it seems, I mean, Invisibles is very much a Morrison book, like through and through. So it would seem like that would be
89 was Arkham Asylum.
Okay.
So then that will give you a date in there. But like,
Well, this is issues 17 through 25, so it's not the
no.
100% accurate date.
I'm trying to find. The sad thing is he has
Sorry,
so
guys.
many books that it's hard to find on my list.
Man works a lot.
Yeah, he does a lot of stuff. But Arkham was kind of the first big book. I will go say he had.
It
He was
sounds like he
getting
must have been working on a couple of them at the same time.
Yeah. And I know that, and he talks a lot about like Invisibles was one of those things. Here we go. Sebastian No was 93, and Mystery Plays 94, 96. Where is the Invisibles? Oh, I don't have the dates on Invisibles because that doesn't help.
I've got a phone. Hold on.
Yeah. 90s, I imagine. I think a lot of like the big stuff was right after Arkham because he could kind of write his own ticket.
Yeah.
Arkham Asylum, there we are. There's some beautiful McKean art. Arkham Asylum was a very interesting experiment, which was one of the first, I hate to call it high art mainstream comics, but
It was.
But it was. I mean, no,
You don't have to want to call it what it was, but it was.
There was a push at the time towards the idea of mature comics, of comics maturing.
Yeah.
Or if you were on the other end of it, adult comics.
And that was 89, yeah?
That was 89.
So that's very much in the zeitgeist of like
Watchmen
Watchmen, Frank
and
Miller's Batman, Year One, all that stuff.
All these things were kind of happening, and there were suddenly these graphic novels being published that were considered to be more mature. For however true that may or may not be, I certainly
Grimdark.
I take umbrage.
Yeah.
The truth is that we talk a lot about how that tendency towards sophistication got transformed over time into like oversimplified faux maturity. But the truth is, before it was oversimplified faux maturity, it was a bunch of people doing
very
interesting,
mature.
complex, sophisticated stuff. Like there's, it earned its reputation.
It did, and Arkham is a beautiful book. I believe it's Dave McKean. It was some of his first comic work.
So, yes.
I know I'm being like so iffy on this because my notes are so all over the place.
I'm still looking at when Doom Patrol was. I think it
know.
was 89, and I think Invisibles was 94. But
I know we are all.
I'm Siley says, question, Taliesin, I know you're fanboying like crazy, and while that's adorable, could you please start from the beginning?
Yes, that's what we're doing now. So Arkham Asylum is kind of the beginning. He was part of this British invasion movement of writers and artists being brought in from the UK through Vertigo. To sort of spice up and bring some life to the American comic scene with all these characters that while the British creators loved, they had some interesting takes on things like the Miracle Man and Captain Britain coming to the forefront. And Arkham Asylum, happened at the same time that the Batman movie happened. That was a big deal, and that made a big dent. And it was a beautiful book. Like you saw a little bit of the art pop up. It's truly a stunning book and beautifully painted. It is one of the scariest Jokers that I've ever read. People try and make the Joker scary. Morrison is one of the few that almost always succeeds in making the Joker really terrifying. And it is not a fun. Oh yeah, look at that.
well, Madness is something of a specialty of his.
Yeah, and this book. This is Batman. This I actually can even tell you I haven't read this book in 2 years, and I can tell you that the page before this is Batman walking up to Arkham and seeing a ring of salt, and he touches it and goes, "What is this?" And Joker says, "Oh, it's salt. Don't I just look good enough to eat?" And that's what he's saying in that panel right there. The deal with this book is Arkham gets taken over by the inmates. And they agree to let everybody go if Batman agrees to go into to be the trade for the hostages. And it's a night in Arkham. Batman spends a night in Arkham with the inmates trying to convince him that he belongs there. And it's really intense and extremely hallucinogenic, and created a lot of the backstory for the family that created Arkham Asylum. And like the hidden histories of Arkham. And the stories of Arkham killing his mother and consuming human flesh, and all these weird, dark stories, and why there's a statue of like Gabriel fighting the serpent in the front of the asylum, and like really defining the madness of Two-Face and the madness of the Joker, and really creating a voice for characters like the Mad Hatter and Maxie Zeus, and Clayface. It was a different Clayface. It was a very interesting and a lot of these characters, and creating a structure that people still use today. That most of Batman's villains are rooted in mental health. They almost all can be placed somewhere on a mental health index, and a lot of them are literally embodiments of mental health issues.
And this was one of the first works to sort of treat that in a way that we would now all recognize, right?
Yes, and including and also recognizing that Batman isn't healthy.
Yeah.
And really breaking.
Was he one? Would you say that he's one of the first writers to really recognize the full, like, sort of mental instability of Batman or Bruce Wayne?
People have recognized that Batman has to be crazy to put on a bat suit and go out and. Morrison has a great way of putting it. It's like if you can boil it down, one of the ways you can boil down Batman is he's this insanely rich guy who is traumatized to the point where he now, gets a teenager, puts on tights with his teenager, and goes out and beats up poor people. And there's a truth to that.
Sometimes he beats up rich people.
Yeah, sometimes, but understanding. But there's Frank Miller got a bit of that. He understood that Batman was crazy, but sort of embraced it. Mm-hmm. Other writers, or Alan Moore, obviously embraced the notion that Batman and the Joker are both crazy and what that means and how they relate.
And they're
to
like each other's equal in some way.
And Morrison has some interesting theories that I love on that book. But
he's referring to Grant Morrison making theories about Alan Moore's The Killing Joke.
Which there's no better way to piss off Alan Moore than
to have theories about The Killing
See,
Joke.
that's the question. Does he even believe that, or is he just making Alan Moore mad?
Both is my guess.
He just loves to poke the bear.
I don't want to make Alan Moore mad. He could be hiding anything in that beard.
Could be, or
is.
Most definitely is.
There's a coiled glycon snake in that beard that will reach out and bite me with human teeth. I don't want to.
There's a feathered serpent for sure.
A quick peek online is making it look like he had done a couple of stories for annuals and things, and then Arkham Asylum, Animal Man, and Doom Patrol all must have gotten spun up pretty close to each other. And it was a few years before Invisibles came along.
He makes it sound like when he was making Arkham Asylum that there were other comic book creators who were like laughing at it, that it was like, this is just ridiculous.
You're gonna do a serious story about Arkham Asylum?
Batman, look at all the painting. We have paintings, and there was a little bit of that going on. And then I think it sold 120,000 copies or something in the first week. Like, it
did incredible numbers.
I believe the phrase was when he got called by his editors. Well, you're rich. was I think the phone call he got. So there's that.
Fantastic.
And
it is Dave McKean, of course.
Yeah, it was Dave McKean because it's such a notable style. And it is a phenomenal book, and if you're in the mood to be really scared and deeply disturbed, it is a brilliant book. They have little letters at the back of the Arkham Asylum by each villain that shows up in the book, writing like little notes from their own therapy. It's amazing.
So weirdly, he would come back to Batman and spend a lot of time with him, but not for a long time.
Yeah, not for a while. Yeah.
He was given other toys to play with. Animal Man.
Who's Animal Man?
Oh. So, Animal Man is a C-lister, D-lister, I suppose? He's on the C-list of the D-list.
He's on the C-list of the D-list.
He's one of those DC superheroes that...
DC!
Hey. Yeah, he's a DC superhero in every sense of the term.
I'm way tickled by that. Good job.
Has the power to gain powers based on animals that are nearby. Like if he's near a pigeon, he can gain the ability of flight. He doesn't sprout wings, he can just fly.
He can just fly.
Or like if there's a beaver nearby, he can chew through wood.
And build a dam.
It's sort of aspects of the animal, right?
Yeah, and so Morrison
their primary survival aspects.
Like something cute. Like it's a very cute superpower that like only a 9-year-old would be okay with.
Like it always threw me off that Animal Man could fly without wings, because birds
can't fly without wings.
They don't just like.
But they can fly, and he's like a bird, so he can fly.
Like I always kind of felt like he should at least flap his arms or something. Like it always like threw me off. I was like, why is he just flying like Superman?
It's because of.
That's not how birds fly.
It's because
Like even when I was a kid, I was like, I
Because
can't.
Silver Age,
I
right?
can't
It's
read
because
this.
Silver
It
Age.
just makes
because
no
Silver
sense.
Age. Because
Yeah.
Silver Age. 1 hour. Miracle pill. 1 hour. See in the dark. I don't know. I have bees. Is it the red bee? Is it the red bee? The guy who has bees? Attack bees? There's a DC character that has attack bees. I think it's the red bee.
Oh.
Anyway.
Oh, you're.
There is a character
oh.
with attack bees. I swear that is a thing.
Oh, you're killing me because you're
He's
right.
a JSA member. It's going to kill you, isn't it? From like the 40s.
This
I wanna
hurts
say
my
Red Bee.
head that I can't remember this.
And I'm apologize.
Is
but I
his
have
name
so
not
much candy.
Killer Bee? Because it should be.
I think it's the red bee.
No, I don't think
Okay.
his name is not Killer Bee. It would be Killer Bee.
His most recent appearance that I can remember was in the Starman issue. It's been a while. We'll get there. That's a whole nother episode.
This guy?
Yep, that's him.
What's his name?
The red bee.
Well done.
Wow.
Nice pants.
How did you
Chief.
pull that
Because
out of your
Chief.
chief?
Yeah, because Chief. Did you just say how did you pull that out of your chief?
I did, and I meant it. Beware
Oh
the
my
red bee.
God.
Bless
Yeah,
you, bless you,
The
DC.
Red Bee.
DC in the 40s would publish anything, man.
I love it.
The bees.
So it's because of Animal Man and because of Grant Morrison that I know the word morphogenetic field.
Comics that make you smart.
So morphogenetics is a now more or less disproven theory that information can travel through genetic sequence and it can actually hop between species, which is how Animal Man got his powers.
It's sort of like you and
he
I were
would
talking before the show.
Tap
It's
into
sort of
the morphogenetic field of the Earth
Yeah.
and could connect with animals. Morrison then started to put a lot of himself into Animal Man. He made Animal Man a vegetarian. Gave him a Buddy. Buddy is the name. Buddy's Animal Man's real name.
Buddy Baker.
Buddy Baker, and had 2 kids and a wife, and kind of created this very suburban superhero, and then started doing some really interesting stuff.
What's funny about that though is that he took this idea of Animal Man as sort of a lame DC lister, and was like, you know what's kind of lame? The suburbs. Like they're not great.
They're not great.
So fuck it. Let's
His
put
kids are
this
terrible.
lame character in a lame environment, but then make him awesome.
Yeah, the book got really, really heavy and introspective in a very strange way, and it started to get very psychedelic. One of the things,
Which is weird for Grant Morrison.
I know,
He
well,
never
like,
does
well, no,
But at
psychedelic.
the time, people were like, "Who is this Grant Morrison?
yeah,
and
no,
why
very
is
true.
this
this
comic
was
so
before
weird?"
people
Contextualize
understood
it.
what they were getting into, and Grant even didn't really know what he was getting into yet. He was actually one of the things he did with the money he made off of Arkham Asylum was decide to start traveling the world, and was going all over the world. He had an alien abduction experience in Kathmandu. He was going
What?
all over. He was just trying to absorb as much of the.
Sorry, I'm still
He can't read
processing.
Chief's notes. The monitors are too small now,
Red Bee
so he
first
can just
appeared
say anything.
in Hit Comics in 1940, but didn't become part of DC Comics until 1956.
Ah.
Bam! Look at that. Yeah, we have a tiny monitor today. That is the tiniest monitor.
Your vision is excellent.
Thank you. I try and focus. But there, I mean, and
He had an alien abduction experience.
Yes,
in
he
Yeah,
talks-
I'm
he
still
talks quite a bit
processing
about
that sentence.
yeah,
Alien
an
abduction experience in Kathmandu.
Which I will get to where you can hear about it because he tells the whole story really brilliantly, and you can find it on YouTube. He starts studying magic and the occult and gets he's learning a lot of good stuff and starting to apply a lot of this information to what he's working on. There's nowhere I can find where he talks about this, but Animal Man feels very much like someone who just walked out of a Jodorowsky film going, "That's what I want to do," because I'm someone who's walked out of a Jodorowsky film going, "That's what I want to do." And I don't want to spoil Animal Man, but I will say if you've seen The Holy Mountain, if you've managed to sit through The Holy Mountain, that's kind of your Animal Man experience. The character starts deconstructing and starts to realize that that he's a narrative. And to this day, they allow Buddy, Animal Man, Animal Man is kind of subconsciously aware that he's a comic book character.
Similar
Still.
to Deadpool.
Similar to Deadpool.
But not as
But whereas Deadpool is funny
forward-facing.
about it, is just there's nothing I can do about it. I have a family, and I'm living my life, and I'm apparently fictional, but that really doesn't change anything for me.
Various people have done different versions of the treatment of his in fiction nature over time, but they've all drawn on this run for inspiration.
Oh my God, we're showing this one.
Yeah, the image that is currently up, by the way, is a fascinating issue of Animal Man.
I remember you mentioned this
made
before.
you read it.
Well, you made me read it, but I had forgotten when you mentioned it to me. It's like the Wile E. Coyote Christological illusion. What are you talking about? And then when you put the issue in front of me, it's like, oh no, I remember this one. Yeah, I love this one.
There's an issue of Animal Man where an anthropomorphic Wile E. Coyote is like thrust into our world as like a weird, deformed creature. But the whole thing is Wile E. Coyote is a Christ metaphor, and it works.
It works.
Wile E. Coyote dies for your sins, and you feel really fucking bad about it. Like it is a heart-wrenching, not okay moment.
So wait, did he die for our sins, or did he die for the sins of his higher cartoon plane?
We all.
Because we're not.
Do we exist in the world of Wile E.
Do not
Coyote's mind?
differentiate yourself from other living things. All living things are meant to identify with the pain of Wile E. Coyote. I'm not being facetious. I'm like absolutely like this is about empathy. It is like a story about empathy.
It's absolutely about empathy.
And connection,
yeah,
and it's a lot.
But like the narrative point that I got from that comic was that like he was in another universe, got brought up to the creator. The creator, by the way, is the hand of the artist with the paintbrush and everything else. And he's like,
who exists in the cartoon universe.
And by the way, now you got me firing. Now you got seminary going. One of my favorite things about the lessons of Christ in the Bible is that he came to stop the cycle of violence, and he came to stop to beat your swords into plowshares, all that stuff.
Nothing but the cycle
Wile E.
of violence.
Coyote in that comic goes to the god of his particular corner of the multiverse, which is a cartoon multiverse where they've all discovered we can kill and beat the shit out of each other, and there's no consequences, and this is amazing. And you can look at that almost as like in terms of the Old Testament in a way. And then Wile E. Coyote goes to the Old Testament God and says, this is some nonsense and it needs to stop, and I'm willing to put myself on the line if you'll find a way to stop all that. And he goes, okay. And then he sends him from that universe to our universe, where he becomes sort of like this lupine,
mortal,
like bipedal
mess.
lupine sort of Wile E. Coyote, but like very werewolfy looking.
It's so
And he
sad.
terrorizes this poor man who has to kill him. But this guy, it's a mess.
It's a mess.
But he dies in this universe in order to save his universe.
This
and
is
he
a
dies
book-
at a crossroads with his arms out.
This book mocks the fourth wall on a level that you are not prepared for. It will make you sad. We have to take a second, by the way, because we are, in fact, because this is the funniest episode to do this on, we're doing a giveaway. In order to shut me up for 5 seconds.
No one wants that. No one wants.
No one really. They say they don't want it.
But what they do want is this amazing Legion of Collectors box. We have some of these to give away at the end of the show today. We are going to be doing a giveaway for these. Y'all know how that works. You'll have to be active in chat, but we're not telling you the word yet. Don't get excited.
There'll be a
but
word.
do get excited for the
not
end of the
a word.
show when we will be giving away.
we can open it?
We can open it?
Yeah.
Open it.
It's been sliced.
Is this the same contents as what we will be giving away?
Hey!
Oh, you got your Justice League shirt.
Ooh.
You got some pops. You got some pops. You got
pops.
some extremely beardy Aquaman.
Oh, wow. Shirtless
You got
Aquaman.
some Steppenwolf.
Not shirtless Steppenwolf.
You got a little Batman pin.
Oh, I like Batman.
You would have a flash pad, little pad that's adorable, but I might steal all of them out of the boxes because that's the cutest thing I've ever
That's a
seen.
really cute flash notepad.
Can
And
I
then
steal it
some kind of
first?
white box.
Ooh.
You open the white box.
I
don't
like
know what
white
that is.
boxes.
Why is there a straw?
Oh, I bet it's because this is a cup. It's a Wonder Woman
Oh, why did I hand you the box? What was I thinking?
I'll trade you this for the notepad. It comes with a straw. Taliesin has
Here,
it.
you can have the straw. All right, ready? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
I'm fine.
That is really cute.
Damn it.
I can use this in the office.
And it's a little Funko Pop version of Wonder Woman, but like her hair is blowing beautifully in the wind. This is hilarious.
She's got the sword. Really, that's quite pleasing.
What size
Okay,
is this?
this
Oh, it's a
is
medium,
awesome.
so that's for you,
Woo!
because that won't come
not
close
fit
to
either of
fitting me.
We'll have some of
Yes.
these to give away at the end of this episode.
We're gonna have a The password is for the chat, yeah?
Yeah,
But we're not going to give it away yet.
How are the chat doing with my insane ramblings?
Tal certainly is the most interesting man. That comes from Death Star
Oh,
Taco.
Grant
I don't
Morrison
know,
is
with a
way
name like
more-
Death Star Taco, feel like you're a pretty interesting
Yeah, I have
pretty
some
interesting
follow-up
person.
questions.
Yeah.
They were enjoying us talking religion, I think. If I
There's a
remember.
lot of that in Grant.
Some
Like
of
Grant
that.
Morrison. I mean, he's
He's hyper religious, like not like like he
We're very
tackles.
interested in matters of spirituality. For
Yeah,
sure.
well, that's how I mean it. That's how I
Yeah.
mean like occult, spirituality, Christianity, all this sort of religion,
Wait,
mythology.
you haven't even mentioned magic.
Well, I haven't mentioned magic yet. Magic. So magic was a big part of my while you were in seminary studying books. I was studying the blade. No. Okay.
Yeah, I also heard the second half of that in my head.
Yeah. No, I'm so sorry it had to happen. I was
why we're such
with
good
my
friends.
weird upbringing was
We fill two different
love it.
complete hemispheres.
I love it. I got one of the reasons I got really into. I was already a little bit into magic just because of my upbringing, and like I was aware of paganism, Wiccanism, because that was my family is strange, and that's a whole nother story.
Would you say that?
Did you ever break into a nuclear facility?
No doctors, sadly, no doctorates anywhere. We had our equivocal versions of that. Definitely had an interesting life.
Here's where I stop you from saying incriminating things on the air.
Things, but there's definitely some incriminating things I could say. But there was a. I was fascinated by the notion of magic and occultism and a different perspective on it. And he had such a strong perspective on magic. He was studying at the time a lot of religious beliefs. Was getting into there was a pop magic and chaos magic in the 1980s was kind of a big thing. Was just the
Did you
notion
say
of
pot magic?
pop.
Oh, pop. I was
He
like
actually
marijuana
he wrote
magic.
A fabulous, that's
Can't
a
rule
whole
it
other
out.
magic. He wrote a fabulous essay actually that was collected. There was a group called the Disinfo, Con that ran conventions and published books on alt culture and subculture and counterculture things, various different things, not just magic and drugs and politics. And Grant Morrison published a piece for them called Pop Magic, which was kind of a introduction to magical thinking and introduction to how to apply the notions of not just magical thinking in the sense of like hoping that something will happen because you're hoping, but learning how to set intentions, learning how to create systems to interact with fictional people, all these sorts of things that are necessary if you're going to start dissecting spiritual beliefs and dissecting how magic works and how these ideas functions. It's fascinating. It's really interesting. There are layers and layers and layers, and I've spent my life studying it because it's really, really fun, and has led to some great adventures. He's somebody who definitely is one of those. My life is great, and one of the reasons is because I've pulled my universe apart this way, and I definitely have a lot of that to show for it as well. One of the things Grant Morrison talks about doing is one of the things he used to do for writing was he would create magic circles and invoke superheroes to talk to them to get a better sense of who they were. He would treat them the same way that like John Dee or Aleister Crowley would invoke demons or angels and actually like bring them forth and have conversations with these creatures. He would have conversations with superheroes as a way to figure out more about them.
So does Grant Morrison have this like? Does he? Maybe I'm misunderstanding the sort of like Hindu concept of the tulpa or the thought form, but like, does he believe that in some capacity that like superheroes are thought forms?
I'm not going to go too far into thought form, although I love that. I mean, like, I'm not going to speak for somebody else's belief system.
How
no
dare
matter,
you.
No matter how well I feel like I've got a handle on them. But that's not a bad, from at least the way I know how to approach these ideas, that's actually a very good way of approaching it, of the notion that...
I have no idea what you're talking about, and it's exciting.
The notion that is
Sorry.
that Superman is a thought form, and like in the very sense that like the idea of Superman is very real. The idea of Superman is far realer than a lot of things that have a physical aspect, and there are a lot of arguments to it that you can write a Superman story where you could put it on paper and have someone go, "This isn't Superman you're writing about. I know you've said it's Superman, but he's not behaving the way Superman behaves, and that's because Superman is a real thing." And even though you can extend your will onto Superman and make him do things, if you veer too far from the core of what this thing that was not created by one person, but from a collective consciousness that's slowly been building it over time, it ceases to have its power and ceases to be about Superman. And the notion that there is a real Superman in the center of all this, that is a core thing that has no physical presence, but is very real nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, it very much goes back to like sort of like Plato and sort of like that sort of dualistic philosophy where it's like, yes, we are these people that live in this material plane and we live in a world and there's a chair and that's what a chair is, but like then there's a higher form and that's more real than what we are.
Yes.
So like using that, like that would be like Superman is more real than we are, even though he came out of the imagination. What's that?
He's certainly older.
He's certainly older, but like
he'll outlive us.
Exactly, but that's the thing. Like, Superman will outlive all of us.
And if you go on the aspen tree, one of my teachers talked about aspen trees when he was talking about this. Is if you need to have a physical, if you demand physicality, there is a certain amount of brain matter in your brain that's dedicated to the notion of Superman. We know that there's a series of cocktails that happen anytime that you think about Superman, and there's just a couple teeny tiny mechanisms that are designed to invoke Superman in your brain. If you take those amount of cells in every human being who ever thinks about Superman and add them together, it's a very large creature. So there's your physical presence of Superman on planet Earth.
Yeah, and the tulpa is I think it's a Hindu word for what's called a thought form, and what that is if you think about something hard enough, you'll actually make it.
It becomes
exist.
real.
It becomes real. So like aspects of Neil Gaiman's like American Gods and stuff like that, those all deal with tulpa, where like one of my favorite, Odin, who's
he's one of the Odins.
He's one of the Odins. He is the American idea of who Odin is, but he takes physical form because enough people worshipped him at one point that he became a real thing. So it's that sort of idea. That's what a tulpa is.
More or less, yeah. That's a pretty impressive. That's a pretty impressive breakdown of the basics of it. But yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm very impressed right now. I was like,
thanks.
You know that. That's cool. So yeah, this idea that these are very real to LA, and a lot of magicians and occultists became comic book writers at this time for a lot of reasons. And one of the Alan Moore's, this is definitely paraphrasing him, is Madagascar is real. I've never been there. I've never actually seen it, but I've seen more pictures of Superman, and Superman has a far bigger impact on my life. So what does it matter that one actually exists and one doesn't?
I just want to point out this really this made me
Just
laugh.
because something's imaginary doesn't mean it can't hurt you.
Fuffy Butt says, I am thinking about pie really hard right now.
Summon the pie.
Summon the pie.
Summon the pie.
The pie is not a lie.
There is sadly with tulpas, the thing that they don't tell you till later is not only do you have to think about, but there's a lot of work involved too to make things to manifesting is a bitch.
Yeah, truly it is. But that's I mean, there are like ancient religions and stuff like that would say like that we actually, like, we as humans came first, then we manifested the gods, and that's why we have a sort of like polytheistic religious system, like in Babylon and stuff like that, is because they actually manifested those gods, and you know that extends to like Judaism, Christianity.
Oh, and there's a lot of interesting theories on how that actually like took place and what that was, and whether or not that was literally people, a lot like the Dalai Lama, where like they choose somebody and they're like, you're going to be this manifestation, get to it.
Yeah,
this is your job now. You better learn how to be the Dalai Lama because we need one. Go do it, and you become the Dalai Lama because you have to become the Dalai Lama. And then you're the Dalai Lama, and you act like a Dalai Lama.
So, Grant Morrison.
So this is all.
There's some fun religious philosophy for you kids.
It is, and like this is a great way of, like, this is a lot of what he brought to these books was really a reverence for these superheroes and treating them like gods, and treating them. And finding ways of expressing gods.
That the idea of like there must be a real thing that Superman is, or else you wouldn't know when the thing isn't Superman, and we all know that description of that sort of the emergent property of Superman-ness coming out of pages of fictions written by hundreds of people over decades is a very interesting idea, and he's the guy who's like, I'm just going to use that and make it my actual story. There's
an amazing Superman story that I love that he wrote, which is called Superman Beyond. Superman Beyond was part of Final Crisis.
Drink your medicine.
And it came with a pair of glasses with red and green lenses in them.
So you could be Spider
I
Jerusalem.
forgot about that.
Because parts of the comic book happened in the bleed
was
between
that
realities.
book really late?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So late. And so you would have to put on your 4D vision goggles to
What?
see into the fourth dimension.
That is amazing.
And when Superman in the books gained 4D vision, because he didn't have it at first, he got one red eye and one green eye. It was so great. And the book is him finding all the Superman across the multi-dimensions and grabbing every idea of Superman that he could find to help combat this corrupted idea of Superman that existed outside the universe. There was a vampiric Superman that had been created by the forces of evil to corrupt the idea of Superman and destroy it. And so he had to go to this fantasy world with his army of Supermen, and like Captain Marvel was there, Billy Batson.
The DC character.
So not Carol Danvers.
No, well. There was a version of like basically President Obama as Superman, which was kind of fantastic.
Oh, that's where that comes from.
There was it may be earlier, but like he kind of morphed it into that. There was of course the crime syndicate Power Man showed up, who is also one of the Supermen.
Side note: there's a
Antimatter Superman. He came up with a great reason why they can work together is because one's an antimatter, and if they touch, they both explode. So they just agree not to fight, but like, because they can't.
I love it. It's so
So
good.
this is later though. This is keys to the whole DC universe, Grant Morrison.
Oh yeah, including finally the ultimate expression of Superman. There's like a higher power Superman who's like evolved beyond Superman, and that's like a version of Dr. Manhattan. There's a blue Superman that just glows.
Well, that's in the JLA, right? Like,
No, I mean like here
that-
I'll find it right now. Who's like I'm better than all of you. I will find it right now because it was so amazing. Here we are. The evil Supermen all get together, and then there's this Dr. Manhattan Superman, who's evolved beyond the idea of Superman, and there's Ultraman, the evil Superman. Here's the red and green eye, and so when they eventually go to fight the vampire Superman, they get into a robot that is basically
Robot Superman?
Yeah, it's like a giant robot Superman that is actually like the embodiment of all things Superman, and they all power him to defeat the evil vampire.
He
Mecha
is not
Superman
to be
Zord?
confused with Cyborg Superman, who's a totally different character.
No, like here, I'll like they go to the graveyard of heroes, and here's the vampires, and like, hold on, I will go show this once I find the page. It's so great, and oh, it's so good. And like, there's this giant. You can kind of see there's this giant. I don't know if we have a camera down here. I'll do it. Yeah, here. There's this giant robot Superman. We probably can't focus in on it because I'm a crazy person. And robot Superman comes in and defeats the vampires, and then goes over to one of the giant tombstones in the graveyard of dead ideas, and writes a message to any evil that would dare threaten the universe again as long as Superman lives. And there's this giant tombstone. He carves his message into the tombstone, and then goes back and like descends back to our Earth to be like normal Superman again. And that message is to be continued. It's so good.
That's so good.
Aww. I've never actually read Final Crisis.
I think you might. It's very much. Oh, there's Electric Superman.
Yeah, Electric Superman always confused me. Where did Electric Superman come from?
Oh no, really?
Is that not a Grant Morrison?
No.
Okay, then never mind. That's a whole other episode.
That was we need to make more action figures.
Matt Key. Well, yeah, obviously so, but
For
yeah.
a while, one of the things Grant Morrison was given, he was given the Justice League to write, and he wrote them as a Greek pantheon, and decided that it would be interesting to form the Justice League on the moon as like representatives of the different gods, and had like Plastic Man as Dionysus and Superman as Zeus, and sort of created the idea of a pantheon of gods and had them sort of interact that way, and gave them these he did a version of the Grail myth, and sent them all on a Grail quest basically from Metatron, who made them find the Whirligog to like save the universe from Darkseid. And like,
Is that where Batman takes over the Orion chair? Or?
No, that's
Now you
later.
think of a much more recent story.
Okay, thank you.
This was the one where they sent a bunch of the Justice League into the future.
Because this is the mid to late 90s, right?
This was the mid to late 90s. This was.
So we've made it from the
Oh, yeah.
late
I'm
80s,
hopping around
early
a bit.
90s, which is Grant Morrison crosses over to America, and somebody smart, probably Karen Berger, starts giving him the keys to some like lesser-known DC characters that he remakes in the image of his own genius, and then like he starts getting more and more gigs. Eventually gets to where like he's writing the Justice League, the flagship book of the DC universe, and then we'll end up doing a ton more at DC. Although we haven't gotten there yet, he'll take a turn in circa 2000 to the other company. Which is where I come into this story because that was my first Grant Morrison.
Well, he's sitting there playing,
Same.
and he's playing with these
Same.
toys, and he's doing such a, and like that run of Justice League is really fun and bright and big. They're huge stories. He brings a, he can't use Hawkman. He is told no Hawkman, and this displeases him.
From editorial?
This was at a time when, for those of you who don't know, Hawkman's origin is a clusterfuck of stupid.
Which origin?
All of them. It is. They actually had a contest, I think, at DC, which was they would go to conventions and it's like, if you can reconcile Hawkman's origin into one cohesive story point, we will start publishing it again.
That's amazing.
Please fix this. It's so broken. So no Hawkman. So instead, he gets an archangel from heaven to descend and join the Justice League. An angel.
An actual angel.
An actual angel. An actual angel.
Named Angela of Hell.
No, well, cute.
That's gaming.
Yeah, it's gaming.
We're close.
Zoriel, if I recall, is his name, of the angel that descends from heaven.
With
Is it
an
in
A
book
or
one?
an O? Zoriel or Zariel?
Zuriel.
With a U?
With a U. He's not in this book, but like that actually becomes a story point in the books of that's really an angel, and it's like, no, I work for God. This is a real thing. I'm an angel. Why is this so hard to believe? I am covered in feathers and have holy weapons.
Like, how is
You
that
guys
less
gotta, like,
realistic
deal
than
with it.
everything else that's going on?
Yeah, but we've also got Hawkman, who also has feathers, and he's got a pretty amazing mace.
Who's Hawkman?
Yeah, no Hawkman back then. But this pantheon, it was Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman when he was kind of doing the edgy, I've got a hook for a hand
Yeah.
and a
It's the
beard.
90s.
Ahab Aquaman.
Yeah, and 90s hair. I love those dark side helmets; are great. Martian Manhunter, and then they started bringing in the new Kyle Rayner Green Lantern, who I really enjoyed in this book quite a
Was
bit.
Flash not part of this yet?
Wally West.
Wally West
Wally West.
Flash.
Wally West.
Nice.
And then they brought in Barda and Orion, because why not? Of the New Gods, and they brought in Huntress.
Really?
Yeah, for fun, because they're like everybody needs everyone was like they wanted like sidekicks for everybody. There's Zuriel. Look at him, all being all fancy.
Oh, I've seen him.
He had fun. He dated. He did well.
Like Osriel, but more gold and
Yeah. Well, there's the whole
less Batman
JLA. Yeah,
crazy.
like you can
This
see
looks
this
like a
amazing
job
group.
for the JLA.
And briefly teamed up with Wildcats. They're in there too. Oracle, Barbara Gordon was a member of the team. Martian Manhunter, Catwoman technically for like 2 issues.
And this was mostly art by Howard Porter.
And they're beautiful, fun, broad. It's where we get the Batman had a plan to take over to kill all the members of the Justice League. Is from these books, which is a great story. The White Martian Invasion, which is a great story, which is one of my favorite. It was the Batman is the scariest member of the Justice League stories. Lex Luthor's first Injustice gang, which was really fun. And then some really, really high concept. And also a guest appearance by Sandman, which is very weird. Almost
like the Neil Gaiman?
Daniel, the second Sandman, the White Sandman, the Daniel Sandman, that happened after Sandman got ended the Vertigo book. This was a character that was so specific to one writer that it was kind of placed on a shelf, never to be touched again. And somehow Grant got permission to bring Sandman out for a 2-issue crossover with the Justice
Haven't
League.
read this. Need to read this. I'm excited.
Daniel and the Justice League.
That Chief?
Yep, there it is. There's Daniel and the Justice League versus Starro. Or the starfish.
I love
Starro the
Starro.
Conqueror.
And Daniel says the best thing to Kyle Rayner. The reason I love Kyle Rayner is because of Kyle's interaction with Daniel in this book. Whereas
Really?
Daniel was like, "You're Kyle. You're a great Green Lantern." And he's like, "Well, I'm no Hal Jordan, and I will do well." He says, "You are far greater than Hal Jordan. You know something that Hal Jordan will never know." And Kyle, being Kyle, is like, "No, what?" And Daniel was like, "You know fear."
Aw.
And I was like, "Oh, wow." Ooh. This is why I love these books.
This is the best. Okay, guys, this show's canceled, and it's just Taliesin talks about Grant Morrison every week
Yep.
forever.
I could probably do it for a month, to be honest, because like I'm like, there's so many few things we haven't tapped. This Justice League run is huge. It's a big hit. It does very well. He also pops in for some Flash, and like it's already at that time there was an amazing run of Flash happening anyway, and Morrison comes in.
The Mark Waid run, right?
The Mark Waid run, which is a great Flash run. I highly recommend it. It's poppy, dumb fun. And Morrison brings in a little bit more Speed Force fun and creates an evil Flash and like the Black Flash, and all of these insane things happen. We are also, I should also mention, are we taking our break for that right now? I should breathe anyway because we're about to go to Marvel, so this is actually a perfectly good.
All right, so he's reached the.
Are we running it?
Oh, hey,
so
I wrote this.
We actually have a sponsor. We're going to run the sponsor, and then I'm going to say a little love for the sponsor because I love this sponsor.
Yeah, and I wrote this.
I nerded at them
Pretty
at
excited
a
about
con
this.
recently. So let's run the thing, and then for Weave, and then we'll be right back.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
I wrote this.
Playing any role-playing game, or RPG, as nerds call it, can be intimidating. Telling a bad story can lead players to mutiny. The minis are really sharp and hurty. And plotting out all those dungeons can be a real pain in the neck. Not to mention, where do you keep everything? If any of this looks familiar to you, then have we got a game for you. The 21st century's answer to role-playing games. Weave! Weave! That's right, Weave. Weave is a game that uses your smartphone to scan in new story elements into your world of your choice and lets you create characters for those worlds in minutes. By scanning in 2 different decks of cards and a handful of dice, you can be playing in minutes. Buy Weave today!
So seriously, guys, I did in fact steal the first Weave deck that they sent to our studio and brought it home so I could play with it until they demanded I bring it back so you could make that commercial. I really like this game. It's a lot of fun. It almost isn't. It's a storytelling machine that helps you build narrative if you don't know how. It's really fun. It's silly and strange.
It looks wonderful. I haven't gotten to play with it yet. But.
I'm enjoying my copy.
I haven't played it yet. I only I learned the basics to because I wrote the commercial.
Yeah? Did you?
Did you read the commercial?
I wrote that. Yeah.
That was good.
Like I learned the basics from it so I could write it, but I haven't played it yet. But everyone in the office who has played it is just like, oh my God, this game is the best. Yeah. So
it's a lot of fun, and it's one of those things. I've been playing with narrative, like tarot deck narrative for a while, and I'm so irritated that someone beat me to it. Just if you guys want to see the game, by the way, it's got an app, and the app interacts with the cards in a really cool way, and it's just like a couple dice and the cards, and then like you take a picture of the card basically with your phone, and then like it helps
like
drive the narrative.
What is it? A QR code? Is that what the kids call it?
Yeah, except instead of a QR code, it just, because the cards are so iconic, the phone just instantly recognizes them.
Really?
Like Marvel AR.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Where can they go? Do you have that info?
I mean, they can just go to weave.game.com.
Weave.game.com.
Yep.
Go check it out after the show because they're
yeah.
really nice, and they were fun to hang out with at PAX Unplugged. So.
So here's what it says from the site, just to give
bring
that. Weave is a 21st century storytelling platform for everyone. With just 2 decks of cards and a handful of dice, you and your friends can create adventures in any genre, from sci-fi to high school comedy. When combined with free companion app, Weave provides all the power you'll need to discover new worlds, imagine amazing characters, and save your stories online in a minute.
The radio announcer voice choice is a really interesting one there, where it's like a dream landscape. It's you're like a dream landscape inhabited by symbolic figures. Like, all right.
Meanwhile, in a seedy bar in downtown San Diego.
What?
But yeah, no, really.
It does
guys.
actually look really cool. Thank you for your support, Weave.
Thank you for your support,
Yeah.
Weave, and thank you for being so much fun.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Before we get to the late 90s and switching companies and all kinds of other stuff.
Uh-huh.
What's Invisibles about?
Oh, boy.
Oh, man, I have never read this until this week, and I was so excited for it. By the way, thank you, producer Liz.
We need some topics.
We're going to need some topics. We're going to do our 5-minute question, 5-minute topic, our little Wednesday Club one shot. And yeah, so start submitting those, and we'll.
I'm diverting here because for
Yeah,
many
we
of my
better.
friends who love Morrison, this is a central text.
This is
and it
the
was
central
when he
text.
got to create something from the ground up for himself.
It literally nearly killed him. Like, he was hospitalized because of this book. It nearly ended his life. It was
What?
a lot. This book, this is one of those books that changes lives. Like, and I legitimately, like, I think I was almost avoiding it because it's just so much.
You don't have to. We could just let it be the
No,
mystery
I mean,
that
should
hangs in the background of the episode.
Should we make this? That's a whole other episode, except for a mention here.
No, I mean, like,
it's okay.
Like, this is one of those things where if you're a person that this is going to affect, it's going like, you just need to just go in and deal with it. I'm very curious. I keep wanting to send it to some of my younger friends who are like in their early 20s and just see, and I think it possibly is even more relevant now than it used to be. I'm not sure. I'm kind of curious.
Well, what to you is the most definitive message from this book that you think that you find
That's
so formative?
Complicated. Oh, okay.
So let me ask maybe a better question. When you say that you want to give this to some of your younger friends in their 20s, why? What is it that they need that book will supply them with?
Wow.
Is it the things they could unlearn?
Yes and no. The Invisibles, okay, I was just going to have a moment where I said how good Kill Your Boyfriend is, and Kill Your
Oh,
Boyfriend
read that book.
is a great one-shot where it's basically a retelling of the Bacchus myth, where
Art by Philip Bond.
beautiful art, a girl with a terrible boyfriend meets a really cool guy who then kills her boyfriend. They go on a drug-riddled, mad robbery killing spree across London, and it's amazing and terrible and beautiful. But it's one of my screensavers that pops up every now and then is from that book. Invisibles, God, I don't even. Invisibles is about a lot of things, and the deeper you go into the book and its story, what it's about becomes more complicated. And when it begins, the beginning of the very start of the Invisibles is very much about the notion of disobedience versus obedience, chaos versus order, control versus freedom, and it's a group of anarchists and magicians, for no better metaphor, who have been waging war against the concept of authority. There are powers of authority and control that are manifested versions of things that exist in the world, and of abuse of power and control and assimilation, and this kind of underground group of freedom fighters / terrorists get together and sort of are fighting, and it becomes murkier the further you go into the book exactly what anybody's fighting for and whether or not it's doing any good and whether or not it's actually making things worse, which is one of the things I love about the book. But the first two books are really about the notion of the power of disobedience. The main character is a.
Do you mean positive power of disobedience, negative power, or are you assigning any sort of morality to that power?
I believe the first image in the book is Dane, the main character, with a Molotov cocktail blowing up a mini
Library.
Oh, it's a library. He's setting fire to a library.
And I believe it's the school library.
Yes, and then beating his nice liberal English teacher into a pulp.
Well, essentially, you meet. There's a kid throws something through a window and then gets recruited by a bunch of folks who are who rescue him from a terrifying conformity kind of institution.
He gets
and
sent to
it
an
gets weirder
institution.
from there.
Yeah, he gets sent to an institution where they're going to lobotomize him, basically.
Yeah, it's sort of like a military school.
Yeah, it's a military school where they're literally going to perform brain surgery on him, and like he finds a room filled with bottles of little chunks of brain matter from all the boys who are now good boys. Mm-hmm. And there are elder gods involved. There's a whole oh God, Mr. Quimper. There's a whole layers of weird sickness. And he gets sort of rescued from this to join these little like microcells of terrorists, basically, is the best, of anti-establishment. The Discordianism gets brought up a lot. And Grant Morrison inserts himself as a character in this called King Mob, who's named after a piece of graffiti from the French Revolution. and he's basically this guy who has kind of invented himself into this super cool agent who wears a scary mask and just shoots people and like paints his grenades Dayglow pink and and has kind of built this fetishistic death god and himself into this fetishistic death god. Kind of ex-military girl named Boy. They all have code names: King Mob, Boy, Mad Hetty. I'm trying to remember all of them. Mad Hetty, who is from the future, but it's complicated. She's a time traveler, but it's complicated.
I've already met Tom O'Bedlam.
Tom O'Bedlam, who's a member of a previous cell, who then creates this new member, Jack Frost, who's this powerful magician and psychic, who is this kid, this angry young kid from, I think he's kid from Glasgow again, who's just this.
I believe Liverpool.
Liverpool. He's Liverpool.
Yeah.
Because he starts seeing ghosts, and he sees at one point the ghosts of John Lennon and the Beatles of Lennon and McCartney having a conversation by the river.
Yeah.
It's really heavy and weird, and then I'm trying to remember all the different characters. It's been so long in the first book.
But so essentially, it is a product of Grant Morrison's imagination. It is a long-form story with just sort of fantastic art from a couple of different contributors throughout.
Yes.
Do you know how many volumes it went for?
Quite a few.
They collect it in different ways now, so it gets confusing. I think it originally was like, in paperbacks, it was like 6 or 7, and now it's 3 or 4 hardcovers, something like that. And maybe because depending on how much they put into each collection.
I just want to know if I can finish this over Christmas.
No, it's a lot, and there's a lot of concepts that like grow and become more difficult to manage the further in you go. Like one of the things that they start dealing with a drug at one point. I'm trying, it's like D23, and it's a drug that makes you interpret language as real. So if you like,
that is a much funnier title now than it may have been meant to be.
Yeah.
So the
Disney
thing, like one of the
Yeah.
things they do, there's a big, I've got a there's a thing that they do at one point where they're torturing him. They've got the King Mob character tied to a chair, and they're like really fucking with him. And at one point they they hold up a mirror and they're like, we've just injected you with these 15 rare diseases that are currently killing you. This is what you look like now. And he's just a wreck. And when they pull away, there's just a note on a piece of cardboard that says diseased face. And because he's on the drug, they showed him the mirror, and he just saw what the card said.
That is a cool idea.
And weirdly enough, while King Mob was being tortured by these people, Grant got very, very sick and actually started to fall apart in very similar ways to what he was writing, and asked in the letter column of the book for all the readers to perform a magical ritual to help him get better. And then vowed that nothing bad would ever happen to King Mob again. Well,
That's amazing.
He was a lot more careful with poor King Mob and what happened to him after that.
Watch out what you do with your fictional selves.
But this was him.
guess.
This was him taking all the strange things that he was learning about the world in his travels and putting them into one place, and really meditating on the notion of dualism and the idea that there is the idea of a war, of cultural war, and the idea of powers of control and powers of freedom and obedience and subservience, and slowly kind of coming and he's evolved this idea over time of the idea that a lot of these things are just illusionary, and slowly breaking that down and finding a resolution for these characters who could not be more diametrically opposed, and who are really on an almost Marquis de Sade level, although Marquis de Sade does in fact show up in the book as well as a character, trying to really look at the evils of the world as clearly as humanly possible, and building the evils and the beauty of the world as clearly as possible, and really trying to put a mirror up to what he was experiencing in the world, and finding a way of coming to terms with, this is how great we can be, this is how terrible we can be, and not in kind of a cute, this is how terrible, but no, there is a room somewhere where something worse than you could ever imagine is happening, and we got to get okay with that, and here's this place where we are interconnected with ourselves and beautiful and filled with love and light.
So despite being essentially having some genre tropes and being
Quite a
having
few.
Fantastical elements and dealing with all the stuff, it's very personal.
It is extremely personal. I mean, like, he's written himself in on very real levels. It was also, it was one of those books. It was one of the first books that I remember dealing with complicated sexualities. Doom Patrol and Invisibles both. There's a transvestite shaman character on the main team who, while is certainly not perfect by today's standards, was at the time really lauded by a lot of people that I knew as like a fascinating, drag superhero. Was such a weird notion of having somebody like that, and it was a fascinating character.
Questioning
really.
a lot of things that deserved to be questioned.
I was trying to remember. She had an amazing line at one point. They were raiding a military base to save somebody. And Dane, who's kind of grounded, even though he's the magician, was like, "These guys are going to have a lot of guns." She's like, "Yeah." Like, shouldn't we have some guns for this? And she's like, oh no, we could never have better guns than them. They're just going to outgun us no matter what we got." We're like, "Well, what's the plan?" It's like, "We have way better corn," and they're making like a magic circle of corn around the, like, "We have much better corn, darling." It's like, and part of the book also was Dane being this Liverpool kid, was him like being very uncomfortable with the sexuality issues in the group and slowly evolving as a human being. So like they definitely confront that at the very beginning, where he's like, queer faggy shit, and they're like, I hope he gets over his shit quick. And there is like definitely watching him turn into a real person and getting all this shit beaten out of him is pleasing. And it's a book about evolving thought, and it introduced me to so much culture, and occasionally would find bits of culture that I had latched onto that were very much mine. Like, he mentions at one point, King Mob mentions that one of his favorite books or movies is The Magic Christian, which is one of my favorite books.
Yeah, it really
and movies.
is one of your favorites.
I love it, and like that
I've still
was
never seen it.
We will sit down at some point. It's an amazing film. It's an amazing book.
And DC was like, this guy, Justice League.
Wait, yeah, like it made no sense because this was, I mean, like this book is genuinely dangerous. Like it's a heavy read. It has a lot of thoughts and is a real download of whether or not you agree with a lot of what's in here. It's something that's worth putting in your brain if you're in the mood to really put something dangerous in there and let it ruminate.
And it's sort of the definition of intentionally subversive.
Yes. Absolutely. There's a big Mad Tom at one point. That's in his letter to Dane. He writes, he's like, "I give you the gift, and I want you to go out and always remember that your gift to the world is disobedience." And it's kind of one of his big points: is you never have to do what the fuck you're told. You know, this is your purpose here, is to just be a fucking problem. It's really great. And oh man, there's some beautiful. They get into some interesting voodoo. There's layers of crazy shit that was just not being talked about. There's actually even like a baseline version of Get Out that kind of exists. There's some weird heavy, there's weird layers of stuff that like appear. At one point there's a bunch of businessmen who pay good money for these machines that allow them to like access the brains of like black teenagers in Louisiana, so that they can like run rampant and be criminals and then like just kill them when they're done. And they get caught by there's a voodoo loa, like there's like a Semitic priest who finds them and just fucks their shit. It's so good. There's an evil spider loa that just eats them. It's great. It's a very dark, heavy book, and it's not for everybody. And it is aged okay, not beautifully, but it is certainly aged reasonably.
Well, I mean, like you saying, like it's not for everybody. I would, as
I wish it were.
no, yeah, but like even Grant Morrison is not for everybody. Like,
No.
typically, like he's like,
written something for everybody.
but like if you like, he is not. The majority of his books are not easily accessible. Like,
See, I disagree there. I would say that he has some books that are a little inaccessible, and he would actually counter that. He said he at one point, I remember a comment. He's like, "I could write the most pedestrian fucking thing on earth, and everyone would be like, it's so weird." I'm like, it's just a Superman book, man. I don't know what to tell you. I think his Batman books, many of them are very accessible. His Batman and Robin books.
Yeah.
I would say his Justice League books are super accessible. And there's quite a few of them. I would say his X-Men books are super accessible.
So this is the thing that, like his Vertigo books in the early '90s, they were a big part of cultivating a whole new audience of readers.
The Vertigo books are not,
it's
yeah.
the question. Well, to say whether they are or aren't accessible ignores the question of which audience they are or aren't accessible for. They got a lot of people into comics who weren't into the other stuff that was going on, who stayed in comics and invested in like weird narratives that came after that and helped to sort of broaden these barriers of the kinds of stories people were telling and the weirdness they let in. And then I guess he had this sort of reputation for letting the weirdness into stuff. Marvel poached him. And
Marvel poached him, and yeah, thank you. Yeah, accessible is definitely a word I think I'm going to avoid from now on. That's a good point.
It's not.
No, I
actually,
feel you.
It's very relevant to this because there is a question of accessibility for some of these. It's just that I find him a particularly interesting example of the that it isn't simple. There are some folks where you can easily say is accessible, isn't accessible. He's not one because it's sort of like it's so your mileage will vary.
Yeah, like Brian K. Vaughan. Typically accessible.
Yes, and some of Grant's work is very psychedelic.
And that's what I'm alluding to. Like very psychedelic.
Yeah.
He's playing with like very dense philosophical thoughts. Like I mean, there's
Time
like
very
there's like I read Nameless.
Nameless is pretty heavy.
I haven't read that one yet.
It is a trip, and
Nameless
I got to book 4 and was like, I'm an intelligent person, but I'm going to have to reread all of this.
I kind of told you
like
Nameless was not the one to pick up. I feel like I was like, oh, Nameless is
yeah, but like I've wanted to for a long time, and I was like, excuse.
And we should also mention, I'm not going to talk about the book. He does have a TV series based off of one of his books starting today.
Literally today.
Oh, I forgot about that. Happy, and it's so good.
I'm a big fan
love
of
that
Happy.
book.
We're not going to talk about it at all.
Yeah.
But it's pretty accessible for Grant Morrison.
For Grant Morrison, it's exceptionally accessible.
So we're not going to talk about it. But if I'm going to be watching Happy, I'm not going to be watching it tonight. I've got too much work to do.
Happy, I think, is only 4 issues.
Yeah, super short.
Correct?
It's a very short run.
I don't remember. I sold them all, but I don't remember.
I think it's 4, so it's a fast read.
But Marvel. X-Men at the time was really rough.
So funny story, I was reading X-Men at the time, and I thought they were great, and I was like, what just happened? Everything got weird. And it's been like a part of a growing up process for me was to finally appreciate, like it took me a while to sort of zoom out and see what he accomplished, because they threw him on what was like, compared to the arc of what X-Men had been, yeah, they were absolutely floundering. They were having a lot of trouble, like getting energy. For me, it was a moment where I was very into it, but I was the example of the fan whose money you didn't need because they were into whatever you did, and then like essentially, but they had lost traction in the wider marketplace. It had been, I think, 8 years since Claremont's run at that point, and they had done a bunch of interesting stuff. They'd had Age of Apocalypse, they'd had other stuff come and go.
In shots, there'd be these big shots of interesting X-Men books, and then I remember as a reader, I would just drift away. And then there'd be a big thing, and I'd read it, and then I'd drift away.
And they gave the books to Grant Morrison in circa 2001-ish, I don't know.
And he has his own opinions on what he did. I know that Chris Claremont has some opinions on what he did. I have my own opinions on what happened. I love what Grant Morrison did to the X-Men. I am madly, madly in love with what Grant Morrison did to the X-Men because he brought me back to the book in a big way.
You and a lot of people.
And not just because Grant Morrison, I know that people like to say you put his name on a book and you'll read it no matter what. That's not true. There are Grant Morrison books I don't like. They exist.
May I ask which ones off the top of your head? I just want to know. I'm just curious.
I'm not a big fan of Sebastian O. I think it's kind of wanky.
Okay, now I have to read that one.
I know nothing about that book.
I remember
Sebastian
when
O
people got excited that it was in print again.
Oh yeah, Sebastian O is very much like me if I'm really tired attempting to pretend to be Percy and not play Percy well. I feel like that Sebastian O is like me half-assing Percy. I'm like, oh. I don't mean to give the book shit because I'm sure someone loves it, but it definitely has some style. But it's like I'm like. Oh.
You heard it here. Taliesin will fight you.
Right there, fisticuffs. But he took some ideas about the X-Men that had really, like, the X-Men had always kind of bothered me. There's a couple little things that I ignored because the books were so good. Like, I love the notion of the X-Men as a metaphor for sexism and racism and homophobia, but I was aware at the places where that metaphor broke down and was always irritated by it, just a little. I never liked that Nightcrawler had a cloaking device so he could pretend to be normal, and I was like, that's cheating. That's cheating. Most people don't get that. It's not fair to give a mutant an
in
advantage.
the Claremont run, though, at some point,
Yeah.
didn't he? And then
Oh, yeah.
Morrison brought it back.
No, Morrison did not bring it back. Morrison blew that shit up. Morrison was
I
like, if
misunderstood
we're going to
you.
talk about, that was like one of the things in the old X-Men where I'm like, can't we just have characters who have to deal with this shit as opposed to?
Okay, I misunderstood you.
I don't like that they get to that they get to turn off the concept of the book whenever they like, and that always kind of bothered me on a weird
Same.
level. And
Same.
I'm like, I liked that the Morlocks were so good at like kind of painting that picture as a group of villains where there was.
So the Morlocks,
Morlocks.
from previous X-Men comics had been essentially a society of folks who got less fun, happy mutations, who lived in the sewers as outcasts. And they had run into the X-Men and basically were like, look, it's all nice for you guys. Most of you can go out in public. And they had set up and used that conflict to a certain extent. But Grant Morrison really, one of the things that he did was sort of really lean into this idea that, like, you know, genetic mutation is not going to be just a benevolent force that gives you lovely gifts. It can also give you a weird beak face, for
Yeah.
example.
Oh,
and
Beak.
then you get the
might
name
be.
Beak.
And you get the name Beak. I love Beak. Beak's great.
So he introduced a bunch of new kids and sort of like put them in black leather for the first time, which was a big hit with a lot of folks.
There was a couple things. He definitely was like, if it's going to be a school, let's make it a school. That was like thing one that
Love
made me
that.
really happy. It was like
Love
not
that.
6 kids on like team 2. Let's throw 115 students in there with all sorts of crazy powers, and let's have a mutant school. And I'm like, ugh. And that's continued to this day. I really like
Yeah.
that they finally. That was the first time it was.
Which I'm pretty sure he
school.
did partly just in order to break it. Because
Yeah.
he's like, what would the challenges be of trying to run a 115
Oh
person
yeah,
school?
and he delved into it really well. I mean, like, and he created possibly my favorite X-Men of that era. A couple of them dealing specifically with what happens when you have 115 mutant kids.
I
And
hope
what-
Chad is currently shouting out the answer to
Yeah, are they shouting out the answer?
Talison's favorite X-Men character created by Morrison from this time?
Come on, guys, you know me. I know you know me.
I'm just waiting a
I mean,
couple seconds to
there's
see what
probably going to
pops
be a
up.
bit of a
Moment.
lag here.
So he fills the school with mutants. He makes the mutants weird. He creates an exterior world for the mutants. So there's things like mutant fashion designers, mutant music, creates mutant counterculture, like the whole notion that like kids are like wearing Magneto was right shirts.
I
to-
wanna
to
get that
He
school.
looks
shirt.
at the pop culture implications of this kind of
like
yeah.
and like he kind of treats it like and he suddenly like there's this moment where like it's the X-Men are RuPaul and everybody else is what it's actually like to
Oh,
live
we got
this
there.
lifestyle.
We got there.
Thank
Chad
you,
is
guys.
shouting.
Neverwinter
Quentin
Fool.
Quire.
Choir.
Good work, Neverwinter.
Kid
I
Omega.
think Jail, SM, Neverwinter Fool, Kevek 123. Yeah, everyone was on it. Thank
Quentin
you.
Quire.
Spring Hill Jack.
Who's Quentin Quire?
Quentin. I have a gummy.
Pink hair, bad attitude.
Pink hair, but he's a kid. He's got they
Thinks he's smarter than everyone in the room.
definitely
Probably
thinks he's kind of smart. There's actually one. There's a great Adam Warrock wrote a great rap song about Quentin Quire, which I'm a big fan. You can find on YouTube. Adam Warrock, Quentin Quire. It's a great song about Quentin Quire. I love it. You should check it out. Quentin.
I love that kid, but he's an idiot and I hate him.
He is.
That's my
He's an
attitude on
idiot.
Quentin Quire.
He's a big dumb punk. He's
dear to my heart. But
he
Wrong about
has a
everything.
bad day. He's a kid who has psychic power. He's a psychic. He's an omega level telepath, which means he is. He can read minds. He can do really intense shit with his brain. He is impossible to read. They describe his brain as being like cellophane. It's really hard to get a handle on, and he's hard to read. And he's got some very intense powers.
There he is.
There's Quentin. That's
Yeah.
and he kind of gets beat up. He gets beat up. He gets made fun of. He gets kind of kicked around by a girl, and then his parents call him up to say, "We have decided that we're disowning you. Never come home. You're a fucking disgrace." And all this shit kind of boils
I
down.
forgot a lot about this.
Like all of this kind of happens on one day, and
Yeah.
then he sort of snaps
So Quentin Quire disassembled.
and.
yeah.
Basically, and he's very brilliant. He has a very brilliant brain. Sort of decides that he's going to become a militant mutant and creates a pro-mutant gang, and like takes an aesthetic from Namor, Submariner, not the Speedo, thankfully, and kind of becomes like a weird little hate group. Like he becomes this and starts a riot at the school.
The storyline is called Riot at Xavier's,
Riot at
one
Xavier's.
of the most famous moments from the Morrison run.
And just really becomes a counterpoint of how do you deal with these kids, especially when these kids start telling you that you're fucking wrong.
But what's beautiful about that is that, like, the school's always been a school for gifted youngsters, youth, right? But the truth is that a lot of gifted folks also, it's very challenging to work with folks who have really good reasons to feel like they don't fit in. There are actually huge institutional and psychological challenges that go with a mission like that. And Morrison was like, oh, that's in my toolbox.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is the kind of stuff we can do.
And he breaks those kids. He breaks the teachers. He breaks. I mean, like he goes in and really, and like the costumes are. I'm a fan. I'm wearing literally a version of the X-Men costume from that time, and I thought it was. I'm glad they got rid of it eventually, but I thought for the time period it was great. He was. There's always been
They are cool looking.
There's always been a undercurrent of sexual tension in the X-Men. There's been a sexuality at play in those characters. It's not a mistake that the Hellfire Club, it looks like a bordello, and that like that's not a mistake. That was all very intentional. The whole Phoenix, Black Queen push. I mean, there's always been that push of these really interesting ideas of countersexuality and also the sexuality of marginalized classes is a very real topic and one that the X-Men, I will say, over time did really well. And Morrison brought that back in a big way.
It's implicit in the metaphor of just the team's existence. Like there are these marginalized people who are seeking just to be accepted, you know.
So there's going to be this fetishization anyway, and so he brought in the White Queen, who had been a villain from the Hellfire Club previously, and
been slowly reformed. She was actually the co-headmaster of the school at Generation X in a book that I loved very much.
I love
and had been
Generation
in
X.
this path, this sort of like this quasi-reformation, but he brought her in a big way and established one of what is now one of the central relationships for that character, came out of this run, but at the time was very much like, what are you doing?
He figured out that Jean Grey and Cyclops together were boring.
Never true, never going to be true, but that's fine.
At that moment, I'll give you your Jean Grey Cyclops. Let me trade that. Let me change that.
I'm going to agree with the second half of this. I just don't agree with the first half.
He figured out that Cyclops was boring with Jean Grey. Jean Grey was not necessarily boring with Cyclops.
Proceed to the second half of the sentence.
And he blew it up. He blew it up really, really hard, and he had Scott cheat on Emma in a way that I really
Cheat on Jean.
Cheat on Jean. Oh wow,
With
yeah,
Emma.
thank you. I forgot that just to make it really weird, Emma dressed up like Jean.
Yeah.
And they got into some like weird sexual role playing.
It was in his head. Does it count? These are the kinds
when you're
of
dealing with
questions you ask.
telepaths, yes, it does.
Yeah. The second half of the sentence for me is he figured out that Emma and Scott.
Thank you. not an accident.
The second half of the sentence for me is he figured out that Emma and Scott would be a very interesting pair. So while I'll never agree that there's something wrong with Scott and Jean, he figured out that Scott and Emma was an incredibly interesting combination,
Scott's a Boy Scout, and she's like half a villain. Like it's such an interesting.
And Scott needed a break. Scott needed to be broken, and she did a very good job. There's an amazing cover. It's not even a Morrison book. It was just people later playing with it, which is one of my favorite. Again, like tapping into that whole. There's weird sexuality issues with the X-Men that I love.
This is a thing we should circle back to because we haven't this is at a later date.
At a later date. There's going to be an X-Men episode.
That's a whole other episode.
But there's a cover, and there's a cover of the X-Men that's one of my favorites. That is literally Scott Summers on all fours with Emma sitting on top of him, riding him, feeding him waffles with a fork while she's sitting on top of him like a piece of furniture. It is a real thing.
So this is Emma Frost, a.k.a. the White Queen, who went from being an X-Men villain to an X-Men quasi-ally to a straight-up member of the X-Men.
Yeah.
And then she was the headmistress of the school for a time.
Oh, she was great.
She's been on quite the journey, but this was one of the really interesting phases.
How I remember. I'm trying to remember the exact. And I think Morrison.
To do which we sacrificed Jean again.
Yeah, well,
Not my favorite.
Not my favorite either. Although it did lead to some interesting stuff. But
Boy, it sure made interesting things happen for the male character in the story.
yeah. Well, I mean, even with, yeah.
I mean, that's literally what happened. It did. It made really interesting things happen for the male. That's the problem with this trope, is that you have to, like, it does work sometimes. It's just that if everybody does the same thing, it gets real boring.
No, you're absolutely right, and it does break my heart a little bit because I love Jean. I think she's a great character, and I keep getting irritated. They keep killing her.
It's okay. We're about to have two of her again.
But Emma, I remember.
She has her own book right now. Don't worry about it.
I remember
Brad.
Emma getting into the taxi about to leave Xavier's, and her exact words were, "On second thought, turn the cab around. I've just had an epiphany, like Paul on the way to Damascus," and turns back around. And we find out later, of course, that it's because she was manipulated, but that's a whole other story.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot that Morrison made the X-Men really start to break the notion of what the X-Men is down and pull it apart.
So this era was called the New X-Men, and it one of the things that you can sort of tell over time, like, if people just run in and sort of muck about with stuff, what really matters is whether that impacts things going forward. And this run had a huge
everything.
impact for the creators who followed it, for the fan base of the book. It was coming out around the time the first movies were coming out, and there was a lot of, and it really did put this energy back into the book. Whether you liked or didn't like every specific thing that happened, there were some inconsistencies in the art over time. There were all these other sort of things at work, but the question that can only be answered by time of, like, which runs looking backwards have had the most far-reaching influence, it's up there for sure.
It is. It did that. Normally, the notion of characters like this is that it's the toy box, and you play with the toys, and then you put them back in the box. And every now and then, and like maybe a toy breaks, or you get a new toy and you put it in the box, but there's a box, and everything goes back when you're done. So the next guy can come in and play with the toy box. This broke the toy box pretty badly. Like, you're not supposed to break the toy box, but the X-Men is one of those weird titles where the toy box gets broken every now and then. And boy, Morrison came in and hit it with a hammer.
right? I mean,
White
New
Queen was
X-Men-
certainly better for it. Cyclops
Yeah.
was better for it. The school concept improved as a result. Like, a lot of things
Yeah,
were
Did
better
Morrison
for it.
also introduce the idea of secondary mutations?
Yes.
But that was
He
him
did.
too, right? 'Cause
Absolutely
Emma
him.
I
Frost
hated
got
it
her-
at the time. Hated it.
Of course you did. No,
I did too,
get-
but now I kind of dig it.
I think
Like,
it
same.
made
yeah.
Hank McCoy more interesting. I felt so bad. Hank had such a bad time in that
Morrison
book.
was ahead of me on so many things where I was like, that's a dumb idea. And now I'm like, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Of course, secondary
you're
mutation.
mutants.
Poor
You're gonna
Hank
keep
and his
changing.
secondary mutation was the sad. Like
Oh, where he's becoming
Probably
more...
why I was mad at him.
breaking up with Trish was the saddest
Oh,
thing.
that's probably why I was mad at this run.
Like that broke my heart because like her message that she left on his phone was like I was like curled up in a little ball where she's like, I love
don't
you,
remember
you're great,
this.
but like there's a tabloid and they mentioned bestiality in the article about I can't do it anymore. Like, and I was like, oh.
He had a human girlfriend.
Yeah, he
I
did.
didn't
Until she
remember
was
that
like,
at
I gotta.
all.
She was like, I can't handle what people say about me because I date you, and I was like,
She's a journalist. It was terrible. It was a sad time.
and that's so real, and I like it's such real heartbreak, and I feel it.
And didn't
Except I
Morrison...
thought he dumped her for breaking the Legacy virus story.
No, well, they've
that
been
a
back and
previous?
forth. That was
Okay.
previous. Legacy virus was was previous.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember the breakups.
On
the
again, off again.
Hank and Trish.
Will they? Won't they?
It's okay. Whedon came in and created Abigail Brand, and it all worked out.
An astonishing X-Men.
I love Abigail Brand. I really
Same.
do. There's so much good in there. Morrison,
Abigail Brand, by the way, is the director of SWORD.
SWORD.
Which is Sentient World
Observation and Response Department.
They are the
Yeah.
alien shield, basically.
Yeah.
They deal with all the stuff that comes from other planets.
Yeah.
And it's
You got SHIELD
the
on
best.
Earth, you got SWORD in space. And she's the Phil Coulson, Nick Fury of that organization.
She's the reason Captain Marvel has the best line of dialogue in the entire Marvel universe.
Carol Danvers this time.
Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, which is and that Tommy Wiseau guy, for God's sakes, he's a wanted criminal on 7 planets. Why have we not caught that alien yet? It's just like,
By the way, Disaster Artist is...
I can't wait.
I think it's nationwide this week.
Oh,
We
yeah,
saw
it
it
went
last
last
week because it had limited release out here.
A lot of fun.
It's one of the best. Like 15
I've
minutes
been
into
putting
it.
it off because I've never seen The Room.
Oh,
Yeah,
you've
don't
got
see
to
it
see
yet.
the
Don't
room.
see the
You
room.
have to see the room first, and then go see it. But at 15 minutes into the film, I turned to Brittany and was like, I can't wait to see this movie again. It's so good. It is so good.
Do you know what other great Marvel character that Grant Morrison created that I love more than life itself?
Globberman?
Marvel Boy.
Oubliette? Okay.
Wait, he invented Marvel Boy?
He invented Marvel Boy.
Really?
It was
The
a limited
version with the
run.
shorts, right?
The version with the shorts and the cockroach DNA. And the mind control saliva.
Was that in New X-Men?
That was in the Marvel Boy limited run. It's just called Marvel Boy.
Just a random miniseries.
Just a random miniseries.
Some new kid now
man.
placed into the long legacy of characters with similar names.
He's a Kree from another dimension. He's an alternate dimensional Kree. Their Kirby engines failed.
Kirby engines.
Kirby engines,
Love
they
it.
run on belief, which is me. The more there's like, he was like, I can't have you talking to the engines that way right now. We need everybody on board to keep this ship afloat. I'm like,
Love
high
it.
concept bullshit.
J.G.
Yes.
Jones, is that the artist?
Oh, look at that book. I can't. It is so punk rock, this book, and he is basically an angry fuck planet Earth. I hate everybody on it. Like, he literally, at one point, while fighting off people who are trying to dissect him for parts, carves the word "fuck you" into Manhattan, like a chunk of it, with like a
I've
laser
only
gun.
read the beginning of this
That can be
book.
seen from space.
So this is a Marvel sort of cosmic character who fits into the legacy of the character who gave Carol Danvers her powers, but essentially where that character came to Earth, he was supposed to be a Kree conqueror, but he ended up falling in love with the place and becoming a protector of it. This is Grant Morrison being like, I'm going to do my destructive punk rock take on that, as
Yeah.
I so often do.
Is that in 20?
I think it's a 20-minute warning.
I
It's
think-
also
I
a
think it's a
reminder
do
to
it
do
now.
that thing.
Sorry, I know I break the fourth wall there. Sorry.
Liz, is that a do it now?
That'd be nice.
Sure.
Okay.
We've got a giveaway.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll do the giveaway and then we'll talk about Marvel Boy a little bit more.
So we're doing a code word, correct?
Yes.
The code word is justice. Please be active in chat and use the word. Is it just Twitch or Alpha or both?
Just Twitch.
It's only in the Twitch chat, so if you're
Please be on the Twitch side.
Sorry, we're working on it.
Say the word justice in chat, and you could win. Do
Just
it only once.
Once.
And you can win a Legion of Collectors box. Is that what that's?
With T-shirts and pop and Funko and.
The box
It's
is over
the
there.
cutest.
And you could get the flash
Legion
pad.
of Collectors. Yeah.
So yeah.
Ha!
Oh! Dallen!
I bided my time.
Well done. I'm so proud.
I was very kind and charitable.
So yeah,
when you
Marvel
stole
Boy
from me.
eventually ended up in the Young Avengers. Marvel Boy was also a member of the Avengers. He was also a member of the Dark Avengers. He got his way around. He's kind of a dumb kid.
Aw.
He has cockroach DNA.
That's where
so
he's
he's like
dumb.
Spider-Man with cockroach, which is kind of cool. He's got exploding fingernails and mind control saliva. Which
A bit of a
makes me-
mess of a character.
He's
but
so
like in the best
cool.
way.
And he's got lots of alien tech and is super cool and like a lot of high concept villains. He fights a character named Midas who came back later and
yeah.
who is a guy who
If you
I
touch it,
remember
you
this
turn to
because
gold.
when Midas came back, I was like, "Who is this?" And someone had to be like, have you read the
he's
Marvel Boy run yet? And
he's
I was like, "No."
He's an arms dealer. He's a multi-dimensional arms dealer, and he's called Midas because he bought the original Iron Man armor and had it gold plated and wears it.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and his daughter is a giant mess, and she's a whole
Please.
fetish monster.
I'm trying to figure out if I tell you what story to read, is it a spoiler?
What? She's great. I love everything that's like. She's such a fascinating like.
We said her name earlier,
Yeah,
correct?
Oubliette, I believe was her, and she's a designed to be sort of a deconstruction of the over fetished villainess in a weird, fun, destructive, terrible way.
Currently romping her way through America Chavez's solo
Mm-hmm.
book, I believe.
I hope she punches her into the next dimension.
America, not Oubliette.
Yeah.
America, yeah. America has her cosmic punch and cosmic kick. Yeah, and Marvel Boy had a lot of interesting growth as a character, and he's a lot of fun to read. But like that original Marvel Boy run is very dark, very punk. At one point, he battles a virus that there's a mimetic virus that escapes the ship, his interdimensional ship, which is a living corporation that threatens to take over and destroy the Earth, and then like reseed and populate other planets and destroy them, but is literally just a living brand icon.
That is so Morrison because he, like, like no spoilers from Invisibles, but like he has a concept about cities
Oh yeah.
as a virus.
Oh yeah. It's intense, high
Like
concept.
there are
crazy.
very common themes that run throughout.
high
I
concept.
am
crazy.
gonna throw some stuff at you just because I'm curious which. So we haven't talked about 10 years of Batman, about
got a lot
7
of
Soldiers
Batman.
of Victory.
Those are a little
Man.
later in the run. They're about to happen, but yeah.
Okay,
We got 7 Soldiers is nuts. Batman is nuts. Are you guys holding on okay?
We haven't
Tell-
talked
tell
about
us-
Yeah,
multiversity.
everyone's doing great.
Multiverse. We may not even get to multiversity,
Yep.
man.
We haven't explained how we landed on Final Crisis, the big Kirby nonsense.
The big Kirby nonsense.
Where do we go from here?
And we haven't talked about All-Star Superman.
We haven't talked about All Star
Whoa.
Superman.
we haven't talked about.
So again,
Superman.
I do so like read Super Gods if you haven't.
he
What
also
is
he also
Super
wrote a
Gods?
book. Yeah.
Super Gods is an incredible book.
Prose book, regular
prose book.
words
It's just
book.
a regular like 200 some odd pages book.
It's
not-
two
not too
novellas
long.
kind of squished together because the book radically changes
when he
tempo
gets to
halfway
like
through.
modern, sort of more modern.
He does a history of comics, kind of on a weird level.
But it's sort of like not like a pop culture history of comics. It seems like it's a what's going on in history that inspired this comic and what happens in this comic that goes. He sort of does this analysis of how the sort of Ouroboros of pop culture feeding upon pop culture and how like that reflects what's going on in that time in history and how comics push that forward and then how they get influenced again. Like it's
This was
really,
only a few years ago. Sometime in the last 10 years, I think
yeah.
he wrote this book.
but it's an excellent, fascinating exploration of the history of comics, going like back to Superman.
Yeah.
Why is Superman important? How's he come about? How does the creation of Superman inform the creation of Batman? How's he come about? You know, where's Wonder Woman fit into all this? Like, and then when he gets to the Silver Age with Marvel and stuff like that, like, but
It's fascinating.
it's fascinating. But you can see from reading that book and then reading like All-Star Superman, his run on Batman and
lot
stuff
of
like
genetic
that,
code.
how he has like a very deep love for everything that came before and finds like a very high intrinsic value in those things. It's like, yeah,
It is, and this circles back to the thing I said at the beginning of the episode, which fascinates me about Grant Morrison, because I've never encountered a writer so interested in smashing everything, but who actually thinks Superman is great.
I mean,
like-
yeah, he's both iconoclast and like not like.
He worships it and he wants to break it. I don't know.
I always found the way I kind of see it with, especially when he's given characters like this, is he likes to crack them open to see the insides, and not because he wants to destroy them and put them back together again. He's like there's a beating heart in there and I want to touch it.
Oh, that's such a beautiful metaphor for what he does.
Yeah, and like he
Like to look at the heart, you have to break it, but you have to keep the heart there too.
Yeah, and he's aware.
That's not how bodies work.
That's
Please
not
do
how
not
bodies
do this.
work. Don't. Please don't touch those things. Yeah.
Dr. Amy over here.
That's
Just, you know.
I mean, like even his Marquis de Sade at one point in the Invisibles has a moment where he's like in a mortuary and like they've got a body broken up and he's kind of just fascinated and yet horrified by seeing all these things that he wrote about. And he's like, this is a lot and I don't know what to do. It's beautiful and it's weird and I don't feel okay being here. It's a fascinating. And he does dissection, but it's not dissection for dissection's sake. It's dissection for this sort of real illumination is what I'm gonna say. His Superman is very.
So he wrote a miniseries called All-Star Superman with artist Frank Quitely, one of his frequent collaborators, who they bring out the best in each other. We haven't talked about We Three.
Lord.
But they did this Superman story that flashes back to much of the goofy early Superman stuff, but works it into a new context and tells a self-contained story, which contains a lot of, when you just poll a bunch of comic book fans, a lot of favorite Superman moments come out of this book. Because there are some sort of pure and beautiful and simple, like some moments with Lois. There's a very famous encounter with like a troubled teenager that comes out of the pages of this book.
Bizarro.
And it sort of gets in and out and shows you Superman's whole world, and Grant Morrison's theory, like idea of who he is, comes out beautifully from this book. And what I've always loved is it was one of the only books that you could hand to like the really indie kids and the really superhero-y kids, and would
Everybody's
work
gonna
for
love
pretty much
Superman.
everybody. Like it holds up really well.
Yeah, there's a couple Lex Luthor moments in there that are some of the best Lex Luthor moments in any. Like there's a defeat of Lex Luthor that's That's phenomenal.
We have some winners.
We have some winners. Oh my God, there's
let's-
so much still to talk about.
Oh, let's see. Where
I'm hopefully being helpful.
winners.
You're being so helpful.
All right,
All
you
the
guys
Morrison.
talk while I find the winners.
It's right above the
There it is. All right, giveaway winners are. Should I do the
Drum roll.
radio voice again?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Legion of Collectors superhero winners are Vance 1982.
Yay!
Gamer K McD. Samurai Guard. K Hellick. Indescribing. And Raznak Khan.
Raznak-Con! Yay! Thank you all so much for watching. Please enjoy your amazing Funko boxes of goodness.
Shirts and cups and Funko Pop toys.
How do we have their information? How do we get
Yeah,
that?
they
They're
get
going to
it.
get
They get it?
contacted.
All right,
Yeah.
great.
In the
Great.
chat
All
right
right, Devin's already on it. We can go claim your prizes, winners.
So
Champer
I mean,
dampers.
this is like the phenomenal Superman story. These are like archetypal Superman stories on like a fun. They made an animated film version, which
Oh, I
is not
haven't
as.
seen the film version.
It's great. It's nowhere near as good as because they had to cut out so much, and like they were like, it can't be as weird as it. When you're doing Superman as a kind of Christ metaphor, things get weird. How did he put it? This Superman loves you, and that's beautiful, and like it's so true.
One of my favorite panels with Superman is him with Krypto on the moon looking at Earth, and it's just like,
There's
That's Superman.
There's a famous picture cover of that book from the Quietly book of Superman sitting on a cloud, just kind of chilling.
Yeah.
And the basis of that picture apparently was a cosplayer, a Superman cosplayer at Comic-Con that they came across, and on a certain level, he was like, Grant was like, holy shit, it's Superman. Like, he's just there. And like, they kind of like this moment kind of inscribed as like this guy was just embodying the energy so completely. There was like, I ran across Superman in the wild. It was really nuts. And he was just sitting there
This is the
chilling.
thing that, like, I'm just curious about. I'm curious about Grant Morrison as a person because I think one of the things I really like about him is that, like, he'll get in there and be like, screw the establishment and all this stuff, but he seems so willing to be charmed by the universe and to see the beauty in things.
Oh, yes.
And that is a really cool quality to keep emerging out of his work over time. Like, he's the kind of guy who walks around in con and sees an unexpected moment of beauty in a cosplayer and lets it inform his work about Superman.
He would never remember meeting me in a million years other than possibly this one unfortunate time, which we will not discuss. But every interaction I've ever had with him, and I've had a few, he has always been quiet. He has always been charming. And he smiles before he says something fabulous. Like every now and then, like you'll see this, like you can watch good thoughts bounce through that shaved head of his, and it's really like kind of like, oh wow, there's.
I got to talk to him for us at Carnival a couple years ago at San Diego at one of our pop-up events,
jelly.
and it was one of these like scheduled things where I found out half an hour in advance. They were like, "We need you over there. You're talking to Grant Morrison," which was great because I didn't have time to lose my mind. But he was incredibly delightful and fun to talk to, and just interested in things and interested in stories, and hasn't lost any of that.
If you guys are bored, and if you're in the mood, you can go onto the internet, and the Disinfo people have loaded up a bunch of stuff, and there's a famous. It's very much a very basic, extremely so. Like I prepare for some basic shit. Beginner's Guide to Basic Sigil Magic Theory lecture by Grant Morrison.
Oh my God.
Chaos Magic by Grant Morrison. Like 45-minute long lecture, and it's great.
Neat.
It's
Yes, you
great.
said there would be more resources like this.
Oh, they are, and this is one that I'm giving is definitely.
Great.
that's
Yep. I'm just
possible.
reminding you
It's out
because
there.
we're going to run out of
We've
minutes.
got 10 minutes left.
All
right.
We need to get to our 5-minute topic.
Oh yeah, we got to do that, and then I'm gonna talk about a couple more books really quick.
We're just going to have a part two.
This is
Seven
a
soldiers.
this is a doozy.
Okay.
So get your noodle cooking.
coffee.
JC James 1225 says, "You're given the keys to the Doom Patrol. What high art movement / cultural phenomenon would you anthropomorphize into a character? What would it look like? And is it a hero or a villain?"
I already have one. Do you want me to go?
Please do.
Do your thing.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday Club. This is our 5-minute topic. The topic is you're given the keys of the Doom Patrol. What high art movement, cultural phenomenon would you anthropomorphize into a character? What would it look like, hero or villain? Go, Taliesin.
That's right. I'm gonna get Mr. Nobody back, and he's gonna create a brand new group of villains for the Doom Patrol to fight. And he, like, feeling that like all of the current art movements are dead, is going to go entirely towards the next generation and build the Brotherhood of Wawa. And the Brotherhood of Wawa are entirely superpowered babies. And working on just basic childhood, and like that whole notion of a baby can make a Jackson Pollock painting. I'd have an evil Jackson Pollock baby that can just like completely mush people with his physical might. I would have a baby that worked entirely in crayon and was a wax melter, and would slowly just like make any organic matter like melt. As long as they were two different colors, they would melt together. But if it was the same color, it wouldn't work. I would have we already have the Brutalist, but I like the idea of a baby that is just completely immobile. So this is a baby that if it doesn't want to move, it just can't move. So it's just like used as a stop weight to like stop trucks, or like you can just put him on the road and like cars will just crash into him and stop because the baby doesn't want to move. So yeah, the Brotherhood of Wawa.
And they're bad guys, or they're just a challenge, or they're good guys, or what?
Mr. Nobody. They fight the Doom Patrol. Good guy, bad guy. There's poopy diapers regardless. So.
All right, so one of my favorite philosophical movements of the 20th century is deconstructionism. So I would have a character named after Jacques Derrida. He would be the Derridian.
Oh my God, there's so much to do with that. Sorry.
Thank you. And his power would be, so I'm not sure if he's very close to Karnak, and he can just like look at you and deconstruct you to your essence, and like sort of like in a psychological way, and just be like, here's who you are, and he can confront you with that. And he's not necessarily a good guy or a bad guy. He's just, here's who you are. What do you do with this core of who you are?
I was going to retort a power for that. He could be a reverse Madrox and pull people apart into their essential characterizations.
Oh,
and then
that's awesome too.
And then they have to fight amongst themselves.
That's awesome too. And then they fight each other. And then they're stuck fighting each other until they come
You just gave too much.
to a conclusion of who they are.
It's whoever's left standing at the end.
That's the core of it. That's who you become.
But see, that's awfully close to what I was going to pitch.
Oh no!
No, but it's interesting because like I would love to see these concepts interact.
Okay.
Because I was trying to figure out my immediate answer was because I'm less familiar with like proper art movements that are happening these days, but I'm very familiar with like a couple of decades of internet development, and essentially mine would be about fan fiction. Mine would be about fan art and fan fiction. Because I don't know yet. Like I think over the course of my Doom Patrol run, we would see every different side of heroism and villainy, because such incredible, amazing things come out of that. And then there's also, you could explore some of the darker sides of sort of fan entitlement or distortion or these other like elements. But the idea of splitting something into all the versions of what it could be, that is this like incredible positive force. But what I think I would have it be is basically like they're not heroes or villains. They're like a force of nature that essentially you have to deal with. That would be the
like
kind of
what I'm hearing from you, if I may, is that so there's power in a person's narrative of who they are. So maybe the fanfic character or the team that you're creating rewrites that person's narrative. Is that what
they see you as a different thing, and it probably like that would be at least one phase of their story would be the power for the way that person sees you to literally change who you are. That would be one phase of the story.
I have a name for that character.
Is it the Mary Sue?
Oh no, that's really good. I was gonna go with the What If, but the Mary Sue is pretty good.
Mary Sue is pretty good.
But see, what ifs are authorized?
That could be her real name. Is
the
Mary
AU
Sue.
would have to be like it would be the alternate union would have to be
Mary
like their
Sue is
team up
pretty
organization.
good. Oh, that's
Mary
pretty
Sue
good.
has so many other meanings attached to it now, but like it would. And the reason I say that if I did this Doom Patrol run, it's what would happen, is it would be me personally working out my version of what those concepts meant to me over time.
Practically, she'd be using her power on herself. It's so much.
It's self-insertion into the world of literally the hero that you wish you could be.
It's so
like,
good.
I've always been here. What are you talking about, me being new?
We are.
There's a million things you could do with it, and that's what I would do with my Doom Patrol.
All right, that's been
That
our
was
5-minute
so
topic.
good.
It's so good.
Thank you.
That was a
JC
great
James?
JC James 1225. That was our 5-minute topic. You can join us here every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. We're on the Geek and Sundry Twitch channel. We're also on ProjectAlpha.com. 7 o'clock every Wednesday. Come check us out.
And someday we'll get to these.
Yeah, I wish I had my 2 minutes to tell you how cool Seven Soldiers of Victory is, which is a non-linear superhero team that never meets. They're super cool. We'll get.
But he also gave Batman a son. There's so much.
We didn't
There's
even get to
so
Damian.
much
Yeah,
we
Grant
didn't even get to
Morrison.
Damian.
And then he made that
Batman
son a
Incorporated.
vegetarian and gave him a pet cow.
Except the son is a murderer.
So,
It's a thing.
You know what we could do?
I love
is
Damian. I didn't like
he's
Damian.
adorable.
Now I like Damian.
Yeah.
We could do a Grant Morrison episode part 2 and explore Grant Morrison in the 2000s and forward and give
might.
ourselves a full hour for that.
That would be fun. I could always talk, and like that way we could actually talk to chat as opposed to me just sitting here sparkling in my eyes.
This was exactly what we all wanted, just so you know.
Thank you. Yeah, no, Invisibles changed my life. I highly recommend it. I would also recommend Pop Magic if you can find it. The Grant Morrison Disinfo lecture is a lot of fun if you want to.
And he's saying
learn
pop, not pot magic.
Not pot magic, pop magic. The Disinfo lecture is a lot of fun if you're interested in like base magical theory. It's some really fun stuff to watch and be very Scottish. And yeah, and watch the documentary as well. Conversations with Gods, Grant Morrison lecture. It's on the internet, or you can buy it off Amazon. But it's a really fun documentary. You'll learn about the strange life of this very strange man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's our?
Is that our
That's our
show?
show.
I don't know.
That's
I don't
our
have a.
show.
Are we?
That's our show.
We're being told that's our show.
Thank you for joining us, everyone, tonight. Thank you for being in chat. We will definitely be revisiting Grant Morrison.
So much.
So much.
So much. Why does he write so much?
Do we want to say what we're doing next week?
Can we officially say?
Can we say?
Did we settle next
Is it officially?
week?
Settled on a topic. We don't have a title yet, but yes.
What's the?
I remember 2 weeks from now.
Oh,
Of course.
that's right.
Holiday
Comics. It's
Holiday
December.
comics.
It's
There's
December.
holidays.
Holiday
We're
comics.
doing holiday comics. We don't have a title yet.
Yeah.
It'll be a title.
But please tweet at us your favorite ones, because if we have time, we'll try to get with them, whether it's Christmas with the superheroes, or I always go back to
Well, there's also
Kitty Pryde Fights the Brood.
and there's a great Grant Morrison comic that we can talk about.
Yeah, that'll be next week
Next
on
week,
the
yeah.
Wednesday Club. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you for watching.
We melted Taliesin.
I stopped
And
the world
Taliesin
and
melted
melted
us.
with you.
We'll see you next week, everybody, on the Wednesday Club.
On the
Come
Wednesday
back to the
Club.
clubhouse.